My name is Davina Bush, and I'm 31. If you'd come by our apartment 3 weeks ago, you'd have smelled fresh drywall dust in the cuffs of my jeans and the metallic ghost of rebar on my hands. I'm a project engineer in Denver. My days are noise and math. Concrete trucks backing up in 4-second beeps, load calculations scrawled on meeting room whiteboards, schedules stacked like dominoes you pray won't topple. I build things to last. That was the plan for my life, too. Noah and I had a simple agreement. We each put $1,000 into a joint savings every month. No borrowing, no, I'll replace it next week. No creative relabeling. We called it the house fund, like it was a character at our dinner table. Our future sitting there, polite and patient, eating nothing, growing fatter month by month. 18 months of deposits. We joked that when it hit 30,000, we'd start touring homes with bad staging and great bones. I don't micromanage money. I grew up blue collar. My mom owns a tiny accounting shop that smells like toner and peppermint tea, and she taught me to respect every dollar. But I also believe that trust, real trust, doesn't need a flashlight. So I checked the balance every few months, just to see the number rise and relax into the feeling that the future was behaving. A month ago, my mom asked, "Still planning to look this fall?" She was sorting receipts with a pencil tucked in her bun, the picture of practicality. "We should have over 30,000 by now," I said. She nodded, then did the quiet math only moms know how to do. "Humor me," she said. "Check before you tour." I logged in that Saturday. Expected low 30s. The screen said 18,000. I stared long enough for the cursor to fall asleep. Then the engineer in me woke up. I filtered transactions. My contributions sat there like faithful fence posts, $1,000, month after month. The withdrawals were strangers. Venmo transfers. ACH to Blake Marketing. LLC. $800. $1,500. Sometimes twice a month over 5 months. The total hovered just over $14,000. There were a few deposits back from Blake Marketing. Crumbs, a few $100s at a time. The trace pattern felt familiar, the way water finds a crack. I wanted to be wrong. Noah had left his agency 6 months ago and called himself a consultant. He said he was lining up brand clients, building something of his own, finally. I wanted those debits to be business expenses he'd somehow forgotten to mention. I wanted a receipt to explain the ache. He came home that evening humming, and the quiet in our kitchen folded itself into listening. "Hey," I said, careful as if approaching a skittish animal. I looked at the house account. There are some transfers I didn't recognize. Could you walk me through them? His face changed like a door slamming. I watched his jaw set into a new architecture. "You're monitoring my spending," he said. "Davina, that's controlling." He took a breath, blinked hard, then said it. "You're financially abusing me." The words were surgical. They cut something out of me I didn't know was there. I didn't raise my voice. "It's a joint account," I said. "We agreed on rules. I just need to understand where 14,000 went. We're saving for a house." Saving for, He shook his head like I'd missed the class where love is blind and bank blind. "You don't trust me. You never have. You want to manage me the way you manage your projects." A laugh, humorless. "You clearly have issues with men and money." I felt my mouth go dry. He wasn't answering. He was rearranging the furniture and calling the mess my fault. "I need some space to think," I said, so calm it surprised me. "I'll stay at Jade's tonight." "No," he said, grabbing a duffel. "I'm not safe here if you're going to police me." The phrasing was so neat, so ready, like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror that congratulated him for being brave. He left. I stood under the kitchen light until the bulb buzzed itself into a headache. The invoices I'd glimpsed on his laptop months ago flashed in my mind. Identical layouts, identical phrasing, like someone had traced the outline of legitimacy and forgot to fill it in. Blake Marketing, LLC. The name sat in my chest, heavy and ordinary, like a rock you trip on because it blends into the sidewalk. The next morning I called my mom. I didn't tell her everything, just sketched the outline. "There's money missing," I said. When I asked, he called me controlling. He used the word abusive. There was a pause. I imagined her pinching the bridge of her nose, the way she does when a shoebox of receipts arrives on April 13th. "If your gut says check the math," she said, "check the math. Wanting clarity on shared money isn't abuse, it's adulthood." So I did what I do at work when a beam doesn't align. I crawled under the floorboards where no one wants to look. 6 months of statements. I lined them up side by side, ran my finger down dates and amounts until the trail felt like Braille. I Googled Blake Marketing LLC. The website was glossy and airless. Stock photos of handshake silhouettes, captions about synergy and building brand futures, 0 case studies, a contact form that swallowed questions and didn't belch confirmation. The address was a co-working space downtown that rents ambition by the hour. Then I checked LinkedIn. Noah had updated his profile 4 months ago. Partner at Blake Marketing. Not consultant. Partner. He'd never told me he was a partner in anything except the life we were supposed to be building. I didn't confront him yet. I printed everything. The bank transfers highlighted in yellow, the tiny deposits in green like they were trying to dress up as income, the LinkedIn screenshot with a red box around the word partner. I stacked the pages into a manila folder and felt, for the first time in 2 days, something solid under my feet. Not peace. Something sharper. Monday, on my lunch break, I logged in again. That's when the alert started pinging like a reverse slot machine. Withdrawal, $4,000. The rest of our house fund, gone. In one movement, as clean as a magician palming a coin. My hand shook. I called the bank. They were kind in the way policies are kind. It's a joint account, Ms. Bush. Either party can withdraw. You can freeze it. You can remove your name. But they couldn't rewind what he'd already taken. I froze the account. Then I filed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus, just in case this wasn't the last trick. At 6 p.m., I texted Jade, the coworker who feeds stray cats outside our site gate and knows when I'm lying to myself. I told her the short version. She called immediately. "Dee, I saw Noah last night at Copper Lounge." "So?" My voice was braver than my stomach. He wasn't alone. Tall woman, expensive watch. He introduced her as Raya from work. She had the kind of smile that looks good in glass. The name landed with a thud. Raya. Raya Blake. The room tilted. The defensive performance. The new LinkedIn title. The corporate church of a website with no congregation. It didn't take a detective to connect the dots, but I could feel one forming anyway. I changed the locks the next morning, moved anything expensive into my trunk, and sent Noah a short message. "Your pickup window is Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m. I'll place your boxed items by the door. No argument, no invitation. Just a boundary with legs." Tuesday, 5:07 p.m. A car idled at the curb. I didn't have to be close to see the watch. She stayed behind the windshield, profile cut sharp by sunset. Raya didn't need to exit to be present. Noah walked up in a shirt he'd never worn for me, the kind that pretends to be simple while costing 2 days of rent. He tried the handle. It didn't turn. He knocked. I opened the door enough to pass a manila envelope through the gap. "What is this?" he asked. "Your paperwork," I said, "and mine." He flipped through. Yellow highlighter like crime scene tape across Blake Marketing transfers, green across the laughable deposits, a crisp screenshot of his partner headline. The air changed. The eyes that had filled with practice hurt drained, leaving a colder color I recognized from unfinished bridges. Calculation. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said softly, like soothing a dog he might still bite. "Raya believes in my vision. We were going to pay it back when contracts closed." "You emptied the account yesterday," I said. "You weren't planning to pay me back. You were planning to make the future smaller and call it growth." His mouth pressed into a line. Behind him, Raya didn't look up from her phone. He gathered the boxes I'd taped with a precision he didn't recognize as respect and carried them to the car. At the curb, he hesitated, turned as if remembering an old script. "You'll regret this," he said. "You've made yourself the enemy of my work." I almost laughed. I almost cried. Instead, I looked at him like the stranger he had made himself into. "The enemy of your work," I said, "is a calculator." He flinched. Then he was gone, into the passenger seat, where Raya's hands barely paused on the screen before shifting into drive. I watched their taillights shrug down the block, then closed the door on an apartment that had the same furniture and a new weather system. I set the empty envelope on the counter and whispered to the room, to myself, to the life I wanted to salvage. Check the math. Keep the receipts. Believe the patterns. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that waits. The morning after the boxes left with Noah and the woman in the car, my apartment felt like a stage after strike. tape on the floor where props had been, light bleeding through without purpose. I made coffee as if caffeine could grout the cracks, then sat with a legal pad and turned the kitchen table into a war room. If he was going to weaponize language, I was going to weaponize evidence. I drew 3 columns: date, amounts, why. My engineer's handwriting, block letters that don't wobble even when I do, marched down the page. May, June, July, August, September, $1,200, $800, $1,500, twice. And the crumbs back in, $220, $340, $190. Money that looked like a guilty conscience trying to cover its tracks. Then I opened the statements again and noticed something small I'd missed the first pass. Venmo notes. They were vague in a conspicuous way. Strategy call, brand sprint, deck polish, and once, just a rocket emoji. If you're proud of work, you say a noun you can hold. If you're not, you send a sticker. I called my mother at 7:45, catching her before her first client. She picks up on the second ring like it's a reflex she's proud of. Update me, she said. I froze the joint account. I'm removing my name today. I have a binder, I said, and she made a satisfied sound like a calculator closing. Good. Put tab dividers in it. Banks listen better when paper looks professional. Only my mother could turn heartache into office supply advice. At lunch, I went to the branch in person. The banker's tie was too tight, and he kept talking in phrases that sounded like they belonged in commercials. Transparency, partnership, proactive steps. I signed the forms anyway, initials in boxes that ended our "we" in the eyes of a system that only cares about rectangles. The phrase account purpose came up. When we'd opened it, we'd literally written house down payment in a field that asked what the money was for. The banker frowned when he saw it. Using funds for a business wouldn't align with this, he said. I watched him type something internal and non-committal, but the note felt like a plank I might need later. After, I walked to the address listed on Blake Marketing's site, a co-working space with a lobby that smelled like citrus, glass-walled offices occupied by people who talk with their hands. A receptionist with perfect eyeliner looked up with the friendliness you practice in a mirror. Hi, does Blake Marketing have a suite here? I kept my tone light, a woman shopping for productivity. She glanced at her tablet. They rent a hot desk, no dedicated office. Is Raya Blake in today? I asked, and felt a petty thrill naming her in her own building. Something prudish flickered in the receptionist's eyes. Not cruelty, just a boundary. I can message the member? She said it like a question with a line around it. That's okay, I said, just confirming the address. I turned to leave, then paused at the bulletin board. Flyers for pitch night, freelance tax basics, and a printed note with tear-off tabs. Need help forming an LLC? The date on the flyer was from last year. I took a photo of the board without knowing why until later, when every piece of the set would matter. Back at my desk, Jade poked her head into my office. She's the only person I know who can pull off a high-visibility vest like a fashion statement. How are you holding up, Dee? I have tabs, I said, tapping the binder. That's the part of me that's okay. She nodded. For what it's worth, when I saw him with that woman, Raya, he had this manicured confidence, like he'd rehearsed being important. Partner, I said. His LinkedIn says partner. Jade snorted. Title inflation is a hell of a drug. I stared past her at the blueprint pinned to my wall. Cantilevered beams, load distribution, the math of not falling. The thing about engineering is it doesn't care how you feel when a structure fails. You read the report, you fix the error, you don't pretend gravity is being unfair. That night I sat on the floor with my binder and the envelope that still smelled like toner. I added fresh printouts, the LinkedIn screenshot with the exact timestamp of his update, a whois lookup for the Blake Marketing domain that pinged a privacy service, a copy of the About page that talked a lot about vision and integrated storytelling, and absolutely nothing about clients. If you're building a future, you put up studs, not adjectives. Around 9, my phone buzzed. Noah, new number. We went too far last night. I reacted because you were controlling me. I'm traumatized by past relationships. If you supported my business the way Raya does, we'd be fine. I could see the sentence structure he'd learned from a podcast about boundaries and somehow turned into a defense against them. I didn't answer. He texted again. We only use the fund as a bridge. This is how startups work. I'll pay it back as soon as contracts close. The collective noun was doing heavy lifting, we. Meanwhile, the only plural I could see was accounts he'd drained. I put the phone face down and took a shower hot enough to make my skin feel like a place I still lived in. When I came out, another text waited. You'll regret making enemies in this city. That one I screenshot, labeled Exhibit, implied threat, and emailed to myself and my mother. Paper trail, timestamp, 2 backups. I didn't text back. I had nothing to say to a man who treated terror like a negotiation tactic. The next days moved with the blank rhythm of a metronome. Work, binder updates, sleep that felt like I borrowed it from someone else. I saw my reflection in the office window and thought, you look like someone who is learning a new language under duress. Friday, Jade and I walked to get tacos. Halfway there, she laughed under her breath and nodded toward a bus shelter ad. Build your brand the right way. The photo was a grin with teeth too white to be anything but stock. Look, she said, Raya's cousin. You joke, I said, but the slogan scratched at something. The right way? What's the wrong way called? Because I think I've seen it. Saturday morning, my mother called. You'll get a letter, she said without hello. If a creditor tried to use your name or social, anything, mail tends to lag the mess. Open everything, even the things that look like coupons. Coupons for what? I asked, knowing she meant doom dressed as a discount. Regret, she said gently, and also printers. It's always printers. I laughed, then surprised myself by crying. She didn't fill the silence. Accountants are good at waiting out numbers and daughters. By afternoon, the apartment was too quiet. I went for a drive with no destination, ended up in the parking lot of the co-working space again. I didn't go in. I watched people through the windows, heads bent over laptops, the ritual of hustle performed under fluorescent lights. A woman with a sharp bob and a sharper suit walked fast, pulling a roller bag. For a second, I thought it was Raya, but no. This woman carried a weight Raya doesn't. Deliverables. On the way home, I passed Copper Lounge, the place Jade had seen them. The patio was full of people laughing like everything was refundable. I parked across the street and sat with the engine off until my breathing slowed. I wasn't going in. I just needed to see the scene of the story that had been told without me. I imagined Noah there, dim light, treating his cheekbones like ideas. Raya with a watch that caught the room's attention, the way her website never could. I thought about how brazen that is, to toast a theft within walking distance of the person you stole from. Then I realized it wasn't brazen. It was simple. They believed the story they were selling because no one had sent them an invoice for reality yet. Back home, a thin white envelope waited in my mailbox, the kind that could contain a birthday card or a bill or both at once. No return address I recognized. Inside, a trifold brochure, small business credit, grow faster. And a letter that used my full name with middle initial like a scold. We noticed recent interest in expanding your business credit profile. My throat went dry. I had not expressed interest in anything but sleep. At the bottom, a line. If you did not initiate this inquiry, contact us immediately. I stared at the letter until the words lost their edges. The room hummed in the way rooms do when your body remembers alarms before your mind consents. I set the letter on the counter beside the binder, like it was always meant to live there, and felt the floor tilt toward a truth I had not wanted to consider. My mother's voice arrived before my phone did. Open everything. When my phone did light, it was an unknown number. I didn't pick up. The voicemail icon blinked like a heartbeat. I pressed play. A pleasant, manufactured voice, politeness for hire. Hello, Ms. Bush. This is Kara calling from Valley Union Bank regarding a business credit application submitted listing you as a personal guarantor. We're calling to verify details and ensure there hasn't been a mistake. Please return our call at your earliest convenience. I sat very still. A calculator doesn't love you, but it does tell the truth. The binder waited open, tabs like teeth. I took a breath, reached for a pen, and wrote a new page title in all caps. Identity. Risk. Under it, I wrote one word. Noah. I didn't know yet about audits or warrants or the way a rebrand can be just a louder lie. I didn't know I'd be learning Utah street names by foot because walking is cheaper than thinking. All I knew was that a letter had called my name and a bank had spoken it back to me with a question mark attached. When language becomes a weapon, you answer in documentation. And when someone tries to use your future as collateral for a story they can't back up, You stop being the quiet one in the room. You pick up the phone and turn the volume up on the truth. I dialed the number. The banker's voice on the other end was gentle in the way people are when they're trained to deliver bad news. Yes, Ms. Bush, we received a business credit card application for an entity called Blake Marketing LLC. You were listed as the personal guarantor. My pen hovered over the page. So you're telling me my name was used on an account I didn't apply for? That's why we're calling. We flagged it, but you'll need to file a fraud report. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there with the phone warm in my palm, the hum of the refrigerator sounding like static between worlds. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the audacity, someone using my identity like a spare battery. By noon, I was at the police precinct, binder in hand. The detective assigned to financial crimes, Detective Ramos, looked tired in the way people who see other people's ruin every day do. He flipped through my tabs slowly, the fluorescent light making his badge glare. You did half my job for me, he said. It's the only language I know, I replied. He smiled faintly. You said the company's name is Blake Marketing? When he typed it into his computer, something changed in his posture. This outfit's already on our radar. IRS audit, pending federal inquiry, tax evasion, shell company behavior. The name Raya Blake ring a bell? My stomach turned over. She's the woman my boyfriend's been working with, or for. He nodded. Working with is generous. From what we've seen, she's the front face. He's one of several so-called partners funneling funds through personal accounts. You're the first to walk in with proof. For a moment, vindication and nausea felt identical. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to undo the last year in one breath. Can I get my money back? I asked. Eventually, maybe. Right now, what matters is the paper trail. Keep every message, every statement, every threat. If he contacts you, don't respond. Forward it to me. That night, Noah texted again from a number I didn't recognize. We can fix this. Raya used me. I didn't know she was lying. Please don't press charges. 10 minutes later, another. If you talk to anyone, you'll ruin both of us. I'll pay you back. Just stop. I screenshotted them, labeled them Evidence 7A and 7B, and forwarded them to Ramos. By the third day, I could recite the cadence of panic. A phone buzz, a memory, a brief hope that maybe the storm had already passed, followed by proof it hadn't. Ramos called Friday morning. You were right to act fast, he said. They tried to submit 3 more applications last night under your SSN. Our flag stopped them. Are you arresting him? Soon, we hope. But white-collar crimes move slow. You'll need patience. Patience, the least interesting virtue. To stay sane, I went back to work. There's something merciful about blueprints. They never lie to you. At lunch, Jade brought sandwiches and a stack of gossip disguised as empathy. You know they're still posting, she said. Noah and Raya, on LinkedIn. Some nonsense about scaling authentic marketing. I took her phone. There it was. Photo of the 2 of them at a rooftop bar, captioned, Building New Partnerships. Exciting things ahead. I felt something sharp and clean slide through me. Not jealousy. Clarity. That evening, I opened my journal, a habit I'd abandoned months ago when the relationship started eating my time. I wrote, He stole money. He stole my name. The worst theft was the language he used to make me doubt myself. I closed the book and slept for the first time in weeks without dreaming of spreadsheets. 2 weeks later, Detective Ramos called again. Thought you'd want an update, he said. The IRS case expanded. Raya Blake's been linked to multiple consulting ventures across 3 states. She convinces romantic partners or friends to invest, then moves the money before tax season. Noah's one of several accomplices. He's not innocent, but he's not the mastermind either. So he knew. He knew enough. You have documentation of him emptying the joint account, right? Every transaction. Good. That's what we needed. He paused. You'd be surprised how often this happens. Someone mixes love and money and calls it trust. Then when it breaks, they call accountability abuse. I'm not surprised anymore, I said quietly. After we hung up, I stared out the window at Denver's evening skyline, the way glass buildings turn into mirrors at dusk, reflecting everything except what's inside. Somewhere out there, Noah and Raya were probably drafting another pitch deck, changing logos, rehearsing sincerity. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, the message was all breath and panic. Davina, please, they're investigating. Raya said she'll pin it on me. I never meant. Click silence. I stared at the waveform on the screen, then saved the file under Evidence 10, Confession Fragment, and uploaded it to the shared folder Detective Ramos had created. The next morning, I blocked the number. Then I changed my own. The city felt different after that. Cleaner, emptier, like someone had finally turned off a background hum I hadn't realized was constant. I started walking to work instead of driving. I cooked real meals. I bought a second binder labeled Legal Correspondence. Organization as Therapy. 3 weeks later, the call came. We've issued warrants for both Raya Blake and Noah Hale. If they're smart, they'll cooperate. I laughed softly. Smart hasn't been their brand. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the sound of my own name. What no one tells you about surviving a con is that you lose your taste for melodrama. You start craving stillness, paperwork, truth measured in decimals. The same night, I went out to the balcony with a glass of wine and the binder that had saved me. The mountains were a dark silhouette against the city glow. I thought about all the people they'd fooled, all the accounts they'd drained, all the apologies they'd rehearsed. Then I thought about my mother, her voice steady through every phone call. If your gut says, check the math, check the math. I whispered it out loud like a benediction. The wind carried it away. When I finally moved to Salt Lake City, it wasn't an escape so much as an exhale. My company's satellite office sat on the edge of downtown, glass and quiet. From my apartment window, I could see the Wasatch Mountains split the sky into two different kinds of blue. Every morning, the air felt thinner, cleaner, like I was breathing absence instead of exhaustion. I told myself I was starting over. No more we. No more shared accounts, shared devices, shared optimism. Just me, a toolbox, and a spreadsheet that didn't lie. For the first time in months, I could walk into a grocery store without seeing Noah's reflection in the freezer doors. 3 weeks into the move, I started sleeping again. I even bought a cheap plant, hoping it would survive longer than my last engagement. Then my mom called. Her voice carried that tightness she reserves for unpaid invoices and bad news. Davina, a woman came by my office this morning asking for your address. The world tilted, familiar nausea climbing my throat. What woman? She said her name was Raya, dressed nice, confident, claimed to be your fiancé, said it was urgent. I pressed my fingers into the counter. What did you tell her? That you'd moved and that I couldn't give out personal information without consent. She got angry, then teary, then left. Silence. Even over the phone, I could hear my mother's jaw clench. She's dangerous, I said. I know, Mom replied softly. I kept her business card. Want me to mail it to the detective? Yes, immediately. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my phone for a long time. The Utah sun bled across the blinds, striping the wall gold and shadow. I thought I'd buried that chapter, but apparently it could still find my family. Later that evening, Jade sent me a screenshot, a LinkedIn post by Raya Blake, dated 3 days ago. Thrilled to announce my new venture, Blake Creative, expanding innovative marketing solutions nationwide. Grateful to my partner Noah Hale for believing in the vision. The logo was sleeker, the caption smug, the same scam, new coat of paint. I forwarded the post to Detective Ramos with a single line. They've rebranded. He called within an hour. You did the right thing. This confirms they're still active. We've issued warrants, but they've been dodging summons. Based on this, they might still be in Colorado or Nevada. Don't engage if they reach out. Already learned that lesson, I said. He paused. They might reach out to you again. Con artists always circle their marks when they start to fall apart. Then I'll keep the door locked and the binder open. For the next few days, I walked to work with headphones in but no music playing, listening for ghosts in real time. Nothing. No texts, no knocks. The quiet became its own form of proof. Until Wednesday. An email hit my inbox at 9:14 a.m. Subject line, let's talk. The sender's name, Noah Hale. I stared at it until my mouth shook. Against better judgment, I clicked. I know you hate me, but you don't understand what happened. Raya lied to me too. She said she'd paid you back, that we were square. They're coming after me now. I need your help. If you testify that I didn't know... I closed the window. Then I forwarded it to Ramos and deleted it from my inbox, my trash, my server. At lunch, I stepped outside. The sky was blinding, the kind of blue that feels like forgiveness, but isn't. I sat on a bench across from the construction site my team was managing and watched the cranes swing above unfinished steel. It looked like the future again, messy, loud, and full of rules that made sense. That night, my mom texted a photo, the business card Raya had left at her office. Blake Creative, building honest brands for a changing world. I almost laughed. Honest brands. She was parodying herself now. 2 days later, Ramos called again. His tone was clipped but calm. The Blake Creative website just went offline. Both warrants are active. Neither of them has been seen at their last known address. It looks like they've left Colorado. Gone? I asked. For now. But you should stay alert. These people don't retire. They just rename. That night, I went hiking at dusk. I didn't tell anyone, just needed to see something vast that didn't lie. The air thinned until it tasted like pennies. I reached a ridge overlooking the city, Salt Lake glittering below like a cautious hope, and exhaled until my body stopped shaking. I thought about the timeline, the house fund, the accusations, the credit card, the lies, the rebrand. Every part of it had been designed to make me doubt myself. But standing there, wind clawing at my hair, I realized something new. They could steal my money, my name, my time. What they couldn't steal was the lesson. If someone ever calls you controlling for asking about shared money, that's not love, that's camouflage. When I got home, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Closure isn't a courtroom, it's distance." And for the first time, that felt true enough to keep. 6 months later, Denver felt like a dream I'd half remembered. Salt Lake had settled into me. The quiet rhythm of early mornings, the whistle of the tracks line outside my window, the mountains watching everything like patient witnesses. I'd bought a small townhouse at the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, one more than I needed, but after the past year I liked the idea of extra space, proof that nothing and no one could shrink my life again. Work was steady. My supervisor called it a comeback year. I called it breathing. 3 months after the move, my firm partnered with a local architecture studio on a restoration project downtown. That's how I met Liam Rourke, 33, project architect, the kind of man who notices the small stuff, like when your coffee's getting cold or your blueprint margins are a millimeter off. Our first meeting was nothing cinematic. He'd spilled pen ink on his sleeve, swore softly, and said, "Guess we're both rebuilding things." I smiled before I could stop myself. We started grabbing coffee before site visits. Once, when the barista forgot my change, he laughed and said, "I've learned never to touch someone else's budget without consent." He had no idea how perfect that sentence was. We never talked about Noah. I didn't want to turn every new beginning into a crime scene. But I did tell Liam one evening that I used to believe trust meant not checking the numbers. He nodded, thoughtful. "Real trust," he said, "is transparency without resentment." That line stuck with me. By week 6, he Venmo'd me his half of lunch before I'd even looked at the receipt. By week 8, he met my mother on a video call. She liked him immediately, said his voice sounded like someone who balances books before spending. I didn't correct her. She wasn't wrong. The nights were quiet now. No phone buzzing with unknown numbers, no drafts of apology emails I'd never send. Just the soft domestic noises of a life that belonged to me again. Dishwasher hum, pen scratching on paper, the gentle click of my new lock at the end of the day. One Sunday, while sorting old files, I found the binder, yellow tabs still crisp. Inside, the evidence, the statements, the screenshots. My handwriting from the worst weeks of my life. I sat cross-legged on the floor and flipped through it. Each page felt smaller than I remembered. The pain flattened into print. At the very back, between the police report and my mom's first note, I'd scribbled something. "When language becomes a weapon, answer in documentation." I smiled, not bitterly, but with the kind of relief that sounds like forgiveness. Later that evening, Liam came by with takeout and a bottle of cheap wine. We ate on the floor because I still hadn't bought a dining table. He pointed to the binder leaning against the wall. "What's that?" "Old math," I said. "A reminder." He didn't press, just reached over, brushed my thumb with his, and said, "Then let's start a new one." He meant a new ledger. Our budget for the renovation project. But in that moment, it felt bigger. When he left that night, I wrote the final entry in my notebook. I used to think love was giving without question. Now I know it's asking the questions and getting honest answers. A week later, Detective Ramos emailed, "Case closed. Both Noah Hale and Raya Blake had been found in Nevada, indicted on fraud and identity theft charges. I didn't feel vindicated, just finished." I forwarded the email to my mother. She replied with a single emoji. A book closed. Perfect. Some nights I still hear echoes, a phrase, a tone, the sudden sting of memory. But then I look around. The house I bought with my own paycheck, the view that no one can drain, the man who pays his half without me asking. Justice isn't always a gavel. Sometimes it's the quiet of a lock clicking from the inside, the hum of a life that finally balances. I don't need to watch them fall. I just need to stay standing,